Welcome to Magic is Real, the podcast where we focus on spiritual journeys, near-death experiences, and all things metaphysical and spiritual. If this podcast resonates with you, it would mean the world if you can like, subscribe, and share with like-minded friends. Thank you so much for being here with an open heart and mind. I wish you peace, light, and love always. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Magic is Real. I am Shannon Torrance. I'm a psychic medium, and today I have with me Lura Ketchledge. She is a near-death experiencer, an author. She is the host of the YouTube channel. I'm reading all of this off of here so I don't mess anything up. Near-Death TV. I'm going to mention her books: Near-Death Connection, Throwaway Horses, Reincarnation Connection. Did I get those right?
Yes.
My handwriting was very messy and I apologize for that, but welcome and thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you for having me on your show. I appreciate it.
It is such a pleasure. I'm leaving all that in because I think it's best to be messy and real. So I wanted to know about you as a human being. We're going to talk about your out of body and your near death experiences, but I think that who you are as a person really informs the way that you experience these experiences. So I would love to start with anything you're comfortable sharing about your childhood, what your spiritual beliefs may have been. I know that your out of body experience did happen as a child, but anything you'd like to share as it pertains to your spiritual journey, I would love to hear.
Well, like most Americans, I was born into a nice middle-class family, educated. My parents were hardworking. My mother was a nurse. My dad was an engineer. I was born in New York State. We later moved to the South and ended up in Ormond Beach, Florida, my hometown, which I reside in now. I had a pretty happy childhood, very Protestant, very involved in the church, had a certain set of beliefs. I did the the whole joining the church and had very Judeo-Christian values instilled in me. But later on, all of my spiritual training as a child, everything was upended.
Right. Let's talk about that, because how old were you when you had your first spiritual experience, your first out of body experience, I should say?
Well, I have to preface with I don't want to romanticize a near-death experience or a serious accident. It doesn't always get you to the open up the other side or anything like that. I was almost 13 years old. It was 5 days before my birthday. I went out for a horseback ride to a stable that I'd never been to before, and I went with my girlfriends, and I was put on a horse that was way above my abilities. So basically this horse took off with me, and I was really surprised I was able to stay on. I was holding on for dear life, and it bolted away from the whole group, went out into the highway, and it was like 95 degrees in August, in Florida. We have two temperatures, hot and hotter. But the horse went out to the slick, fresh pavement, and it was all tar. And this is 1973, I think. The horse connected it was like hitting black ice. This horse spun up in the air with me on top and landed on top of me, crushed me, and then we slid down the highway. It was a gruesome, grisly accident. But just before the horse crushed me, I left my body. Here I am, a 12-year-old kid. All of a sudden, I'm on the horse and I'm terrified. I know something terrible is going to be happening, but my instinct was to hold on to this horse for dear life. And then I was all of a sudden behind myself, and I could see the trees and make out, and had better vision when this was happening. I could see the dried pine needles on the tree. I could see the little squiggle of wavy hair. My hair is kind of wavy. It was a lot more wavy when I was a kid. I could see the print color so vividly. My mother had just made me this tank top. It was green and it was print, and I had on brand new blue jeans. And I saw myself 12 feet back up in the air, maybe about 5 feet from the ground, parallel to the horse, just before the horses fall on me. And then it was like getting sucked back. I was back in my body. And at the very last second, as the horse was coming down on top of me, I put my hands out like this so that my face would not hit the pavement. And that probably saved my life, but it also took off all the skin of my arms. And it was compound fractures. It was a grisly accident, but that shook me up. I mean, I was injured. It was terrible, but going out of body was compounded it. And I just couldn't talk about it with anybody because I was so frightened by it. So that was my first experience.
Yeah, that's what I wondered, having grown up um, with the religious upbringing, did you
Mhm.
tie the two things together in terms of there's this
I
afterlife?
wasn't that
Yeah.
smart. I was a kid. I wasn't
Yeah.
that smart. When when the horse got up from had left me and I was laying in the highway, um, I don't know how I got up and I hopped on my one leg back to the barn. I mean, hopped like a bunny, because nobody came to my aid. They went and got the horse. The farm workers went out and got the horse, and nobody helped me. And then when I got to the barn, I went into deep shock. And by the time my parents rushed me to the hospital, I was in trouble.
Right.
But I got a good doctor, and it all worked out. Um,
Good.
so being a kid, I couldn't articulate. I couldn't go to my parents or anybody, but this seed was planted in the back of my mind. How could this happen? And no one's ever explained it. Am I a freak or what? It made me really withdraw into myself.
Right. Yeah. And um, were the rest of going forward, I mean, because I know you said as a child, we really don't often think, we just don't have the life experience to put the pieces
Yeah,
together. In fact, I'm finding midway through life, I'm only putting all the pieces together about the life path, the spiritual journey, what's
sure.
happening here, why I'm here. And there's always more to be revealed. So it makes sense. And I assume, and I'm going to ask you, up until your near-death experience as an adult, did you live a pretty typical life? Did you have other, this is what I want to ask you. Yeah, did you have other mystical experience, whether you understood them as such or not?
After the accident at 12 years of age and until my near-death experience at 19, zero. I had nothing. But I felt emotionally disconnected from organized religion. Now, I still sang in the church choir, still went to, church and fell asleep during the sermons like every teenager does. But I felt disconnected.
Right.
And I just, it just changed me.
Hmm.
It shifted me. And I really had trouble with it, but I couldn't share it. I didn't even tell uh, anybody for years about it. It was that upsetting.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, yeah, I guess we'll get to your near-death experience. The reason I ask that is because I often notice, and you've
Mhm.
interviewed a ton of people too that have had similar experiences, that once your soul leaves your body, you're more closely tethered to the other side, whatever you want to call it,
Mhm.
because your soul in that moment, even if you, Laura, didn't understand what was happening, your soul has a remembering of where it came from and who it is. So, but it
Yeah,
sounds like it wasn't meant to be your path for you to explore that just then. When
yeah.
did you have your near death experience?
It was when I was 19. It was when I was 19, and it was a beautiful day in Centerville, Virginia, and my life was going so great. You know how, when you have your own apartment and your first car and your cool job and your cute boyfriend, life is pretty sweet. And I was kind of very self-confident, 19-year-old, and I was out on my own for a while and dating the cute guy and all that stuff. But I decided to go out for horseback ride because you know what? I still loved horses. Um, and that day was the most life-changing experience that I can ever express. Would you like me to tell you a little more about what happened?
whatever you are comfortable
Okay.
sharing and willing to share. I know you've told the story a million times, but I know just in case people here haven't heard it. Thank you.
Um, I was out in Centerville, Virginia. I was riding on a horse really above my abilities, and I hooked up with some other riders, and we decided to race our horses. Not the brightest thing in the world to do. So I was taking off, and I was going pretty fast, and I was losing a little bit of balance because I hadn't ridden in a while, and my horse stumbled, and I knew this was going to be bad. I knew I was going to get clobbered, but I also started to go off to the right of the saddle, and then I never hit the ground. I never felt the impact, the crash. I didn't feel hitting the rocks face first, or any of the terrible pain. I went right out of my body and into the classic black tunnel. But as I was, looking ahead and I was about to fall, the tunnel was right ahead of me. So it was a shock to see this black tunnel like come out of nowhere. And then I zoomed right into it. And it was like this speed, this rush. If I hadn't been so upset, it would have kind of given me a rush, or a buzz or something. But I went through this black tunnel, and I wasn't claustrophobic. I was alone, and the density of the tunnel, it was dense, but it was light and airy at the same time. It was very conflicting textures in my mind. I wasn't in pain. I was out of my body. I knew I was out of my body. And I just thought, oh my God, I'm dead. And I just began to live. So there was a roller coaster of fear, grief, dread, and then the profound, profound detachment. There was a detachment in me. It's, oh, something had taken over. I wasn't in control. I lost control. And I met up with my grandfather, who I absolutely adored. And I've spoken so often on shows about him. He had died when I was 12, and it was very traumatic, the loss. And, to see him again, and he wasn't sick, there was no cancer. Now, he wasn't young either. He looked like maybe, my memories of him is when I was 3 or 4, like when he was in his 60s, like my age now. And he looked good, and he was so glad to see me. He wasn't glad I was there, but he was glad that he was there for me. So that was beautiful. And sometimes I just can't talk about the emotion because I'll start crying, and then I feel like an idiot to cry in a podcast and, or a Zoom thing. But what happened next is, they say it's your classic life review, but it's not really this is your life. It's the things in life that were big pivotal decisions, even for a child. The things in life that mattered, like a good deed that you did that you thought was insignificant, was huge on the other side. A rudeness, or, kids can be little idiots sometimes, and I wasn't immune to that. And some of my frustrations that I had, I'm dyslexic, so school was a nightmare, and I had a hard time learning. And the fact that I became an author is ironic. But when you have a life review, it's not like you just envision it. It's like you see it in tandem. You yourself are there. I was there. The real me was there watching it. There was also a perspective of myself during the situation, and tandem. The interaction, like when somebody done something cruel to me, or things like that, and I relived the pain. And my response, I understood, but also I could feel what I had done to others. So you know how the physicians say, do no harm? That's basically it. So, I've done the usual childhood idiot stuff and some good deeds. I saw a very good deed that I had done that meant a lot when I protected a girl from getting bullied in high school by some really cruel girls. And I just befriended her because I could identify with this kid. And that was big. And there were some things I did with animals and, saving this little bird and getting it to the water. I mean, just little things that you would almost forget about were huge. The kindness you do to animals or, the kindness that you show animals is huge on the other side. The small little deeds of love, not like, I'm a volunteer and look what I've done. I mean, the genuine interaction of kindness is huge. Also, there was also some humor in some of the things that I saw, ironic humor and this is what they thought and this is what I thought and this was so far apart. And it was all those emotions coming at you at once, but there was layers, and I can't find the words in the English language that could portray the magnitude of your actions. I really can't. But I want to diverge for 1 second, if this is okay.
Yeah.
What you do in this world counts. Trying counts. Trying to be a good person. Nobody's a saint. I really fell short of, I learned all these lessons. Did it make me a better person? Probably not. But it made me more aware. But it really matters how you treat people. Now imagine that let's say, you're some sort of CEO and you sell a drug or a product that is going to make you a lot of money, but it's going to hurt a percentage of people. And you just go and do it anyways. You're going to have, when you have your life review, I would call that hell, because you're going to feel the negative impact that you had on every single person. And it's like a ripple effect. How did it hurt their parents, their kids, the neighbors that tried to help out? When you've done something really rotten, knowingly to hurt other people, interrupt their destiny, that is the biggest no-no. That is the biggest mistake that you could possibly make. So glad I'm not a CEO.
I love that you said that. I didn't want to interrupt it, but just to say that that's been my understanding. And that's, I appreciate what you said about the hell is really what you create. Because I personally don't believe that heaven and hell are places. I believe they're,
There isn't.
yeah. And I also have talked a lot about that. I think people want to think that evil people go to hell, where they're in some other place. And my understanding and I'd love to hear you can riff on this if you like,
Mhm.
is that it's really the life review, as you said, is you are actually, from what I understand, put into those people's shoes. So anybody that you've hurt, you have to feel what they felt. So
Mhm.
there's no court there judging you and saying, this is bad, this is good. It's
You're your own judge.
you're your own judge. Yeah.
That's the tough part, because you can't
Yeah.
BS anybody.
Right.
You
Yeah.
can't. I mean, you're your own judge, jury, and executioner in some respect. I gotta say that. And it was when I came out of that life review, I was not a happy person. I was very shook up and very sad. And my grandfather was trying to comfort me, but I was pretty inconsolable, because and also, you got to think, I wasn't expecting to die. And I was a kid and I was thinking it from a teenager's point of view. So it's a very different point of view than an adult. So I think that made it doubly hard. Plus, hell, it was 1979 and nobody talked about this stuff.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
So after I had the life review and I was like weeping about everything, it was like, I didn't get a break. I made it. There's steps that have been erased that I can't convey to you, but I know that happened. But I did make it to source. And that is like going through all of these layers outside of physical reality to the most, it's past the thought responsive layers, it's to your origin. And I think it's as far as anybody can go and then come back. I made it to source, and that source, how do I explain it? Source is like you're floating in a sea of pure love that envelops you, and it's bliss. And what is floating around you is all your past personalities, parts of yourself, parts, and that's a mind blower right there. It looks like a sea of clouds. That's how my brain could process it. What it was, it really, I don't know. My brain could only process so much. But there was a light, bright light, but there was no sun. And I was floating in the sea of love, and it was huge. And I believe that that was my origin. Some people say that that's heaven. No, I think it's you're a human being, a soul's source. Think of it as round and contained. And then there's all these personalities that love you, that are part of you. It's like you loving you. And it's beautiful and it's wonderful. And just when you're just going with the rhythm and you can hear these beautiful melodic tones float through in random waves, boom, it was over. So just when the getting's good, I'm like, back.
That must be very jarring.
Oh, it's like a spinning barf ride at a carnival.
I love that you said that. I actually was on one once and somebody barked, but it didn't hit me.
That's what it
Yeah.
was.
Yeah.
Then I'm looking, and there's like, it's dark in the background. There's a blue ball that I believe is Earth, because there was land and there was blue. So I'm more close to physical reality, but I'm walked into this chamber. Now I have guides behind me talking. I can't make out what they're saying, but I'm being told non-verbally that all of these personalities are part of my soul. So I'm in this chamber, I'm standing, well, I'm not standing, and I'm standing. I don't know. There had to be a floor, but there really wasn't. And there is a row of souls here and a row of souls there. These were the male to the right and the female to the left. And I could take my hand. Now I had a hand and like touch, and then there was different personalities. These were all my past life personalities. So I'm getting the idea, when soul comes into physical reality, it fractures into multiple personalities to live these lives, these lessons, and go through whatever we're supposed to go through. And somehow they end up back here. I don't know. But I did look at one man particular, and he was all white and middle-aged and didn't communicate with me. And I felt detached, like, this is me. I'm a woman, I'm a definite chick. I couldn't imagine being a male. And then I looked over, and then I went to talk, like touch or try to talk to one of the other personalities. God, she was ugly and crass, and I didn't like her. And she reminded me of a mean lunch lady I had in grammar school. And as soon as I'm kind of digesting this thing and trying to understand it, boom, it's over. And I'm in what I call a thought responsive consensus reality. That's what I can say it is now, but I didn't know at the time. And it was this beautiful beach, and there was rocks to the right, and sand rocks, and in these huge cliffs there were windows, and there was windows, so there were homes or souls living there. It was Earth, but it wasn't. It looked like the best place of Earth. And I thought, gee, what about the tree of life? And as I thought that, it came. and it was coming right out of the ocean. It's just standing, standing right out of the ocean, out of place. And my thoughts, I guess, created it. And I could see it was a pine tree, and you could see the bark on it was white, and there was some like a light mossy color. It was a very different tree than you'd find on Earth. And I found that cool. And then that was over, and I didn't like have any control in these steps. One thing was over, then there was another thing over, and I'm back with my grandfather, and I'm like not doing well. I'm just beyond hysterical or distraught or everything. And then I had these realizations, like click, 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 like dominoes, like understanding, like receiving, getting the message, and it was like clicking. And then I just, I looked over at Papa and I said, this has been so long. And then I got the message that I was going back, and that wasn't good. I didn't want to go back. I didn't want to leave him, and I wanted to grab his hands or something. And then, that feeling in the solar plexus of your chest, that tug, just like that, like getting tugged back. And then as I was tugged back, all of these realizations, all of these things I kind of understood were just being removed, or a fog was going over it. I can't really express it, but I was losing a lot of my understanding of these things. I would later on have flashbacks and try to piece it together. But the next thing I knew, back in Centerville, Virginia, in my body, I'm hurting. I broke my nose, I broke my finger. There wasn't a part of my body that wasn't, banged up. The fact that I did survive is that because I had an English riding helmet, and it was metal. And I'd gone face first, and I heard everybody talking. So the people that resuscitated me, there was a crowd around me. There's like 3 or 4 people. They brought a car down to get me to the ambulance because I was way out in the field. Nobody wanted to move me. And I was less than grateful to the nice young men that saved my life. And, and they got me in the car, and I passed out. Didn't leave my body. Get to the hospital. My mother's there, and my mom's an RN, and she actually worked at the hospital. Boy, she was upset. You and horses.
I was waiting for that one.
Yeah. One had a horse farm, and my mother said, I'm gonna get a call one day, you're dead, and I know it's your damn horse.
Yeah.
So this part is kind of awful. I get to the hospital, and they're assessing my injuries. I get the x-rays and stuff, and the doctor's very sympathetic. How lucky you are. And I'm sitting there like, oh my gosh, I'm not supposed to be here. I'm just told everybody I'm not supposed to be here. There's been a mistake. I'm not supposed to be here. I should go back. I don't know how to get back. I was very upset. And the doctor, I tried to tell the doctor what had happened. And when I started to tell him about leaving my body and, talking to my dead grandfather and stuff, what drugs have you had? So he went from Mr. Compassion, Marcus Welby, MD, to, House,
Yeah.
He was mad at me. What drugs is she taking? And my mother said, first of all, she doesn't take drugs. And she's not lying. She's got a head injury. Let's admit her. And he said, I don't coddle drug addicts. Are you trying to get more drugs? She thought I was like drug seeking and had an accident and blah, blah, blah. So my mother said, she got to, you got to admit her. And the whole thing is, she gets out. I'm in my mom's car. And I said, I've got to get back. And I started to get out of the car in the middle of the intersection in traffic. And she pulled me back in, and then she took me to her house because I didn't live at home, and watched me for 12 hours and, did all the medical stuff. And it took me 12 hours to calm down. And I had been shamed and embarrassed in the hospital in front of the nurses. This doctor just ripped into me in front of other people, and it was just humiliating. And I was so traumatized from him chastising me and questioning if I was a drug addict looking to get high again. I just knew I couldn't talk about it. So that made
Yeah.
it worse. Yeah. So there I was. But what returned with me is an urgency that I still feel. And it's motivated me in life, but it hasn't been the most pleasant thing. You're so anxious to get it right, to get your life right, that it leads to a lot of frustration. Yeah.
I would imagine, and I know obviously you're prolific in your writing. That's because you have messages that you want to share. And also the fact that you've started your not started, you've been doing it for a while, but that you started a YouTube channel as well to continue to get the word out. Did you feel this was sort of a mission that you were meant to do, or was it more for your own processing? I know that you understand the benefits of getting the word out to people. That's the same reason I do this podcast is I don't I want people to find hope and inspiration. It's a hard world that we live in, and
Oh,
there's so much
brutal
pain.
world.
So it's brutal and there's so much pain. And then when people die, it is extremely painful and grief is real. But I
Mhm.
think that by knowing what's really going on, bigger picture, it can help to bring so much comfort and peace to
Yeah.
people in a crazy world. Did you feel that the writing is yeah, more of like a greater mission that you've been called to do by source or whatever you want to call it, or is it more about you just feel like you have to process and share?
It's like I didn't have a choice.
Yeah.
I mean, being an author came later in life. Um, but I do want to preface something, if that's okay. Just a couple years after the accident, and my grandmother, her brain tumor, came back, and she knew she was going to die. I talked to her. I talked to her about seeing her husband, and she believed me. And I finally opened up even to my own mother and sister, and they totally believed me. And this is what happened. My grandmother said, "Gee, I expected you to come to me earlier about things." And I
Mm.
said, "Well, why is that?" She said, "When you were a little girl, you would be talking to this visitor that came to you. And, when you were 2 years old, you'd be having conversations with this visitor that you named. And your mother and I would watch you sometimes at night, because you'd get up and you just sit there and you'd be talking up to the ceiling. And when we would come in, we were so shocked that she said, you were shocked that we couldn't see them." So and she told me, she was also named Laura, and my grandmother told me her mother had the gift. Her mother was, a blacksmith's wife in Canada in the 1800s, and she could heal people with her hands. She was a healer. Like, she saved one of her kids from a fatal bee sting. People that were ailing would come to her, and she had some sort of psychic abilities that were just remarkable. They were passed down, not to my grandmother, but to my uncle. And my mother didn't get it, but my grandmother said, "I always suspected, it probably went to you." And it's like, oh, if I had only heard this
Yeah.
a few years before, why didn't you tell me? So
Yeah.
we had talked about that, and she said, "And your sister too. Your sister had an imaginary friend, and her name was Hun, and she would describe in great detail things about the 1920s. And this is in the 1950s. And my sister would describe Hun completely, about her rouge, and how she would, what did they do with the rouge? Their knees or something like that. They did
I
something,
don't
some
know. Did
beauty
they?
thing that they don't do anymore. So I was hearing all this stuff, and I always knew my sister had something, but do we ever get the lotto numbers? Does anybody come in to say, "Hey, don't marry that guy," or anything
Right.
really, you know, nothing like that. But I think that there was a genetic component with me that was a sliver, the size of a sliver. And I think the near-death experience had, this profound change, because afterwards, um, I saw relatives after they died that would come to me before I got the phone call, and they would glide in, like, looking like a ball like liquid glass, like a ball the size of a volleyball. They call it an orb now. But first time that happened, I got up and ran. I didn't
Yeah.
take it all very well.
When
Uh,
I saw one too when I was a kid, and I
yeah,
screamed, and
yeah,
I screamed for my mom, and it didn't come back again. So, I
yeah.
know it's scary because you don't know what it is.
Well, it doesn't bother me at all at this point. Um, if you have a sliver, a little tiny bit of psychic abilities, I don't think anybody has a cup. I think we might all have a pinch.
Yeah.
And when you have a near-death experience, maybe more than a pinch, but not that much. People like you, I think, are very rare. And with your gifts, very, very rare. But it never happens when you want it to happen.
Mhm.
And when it does, the message comes in sideways.
Well, yeah. That's such an interesting way to put it. And I did wanna touch on that because I know you probably have heard this before too,
Mhm,
that a lot of near-death experiencers had the gift. As a medium, I believe we all have,
mhm,
like you said, a pinch or a cup, and
mhm,
some people
mhm,
are, I was not one that was a child that see spirit. Now I remember, but I was so little, like, I now remember it, but I
mhm,
didn't even know I was a medium. But the thing is that so many near-death experiencers report that when I was a kid, I had this imaginary friend, or I did tell my
mhm.
parents when people were going to die. So I've asked them, and I will ask you too, what you think about that in terms as it relates to these spiritually transformative experiences where your
Right.
soul did leave your body and come
Yeah.
back. Do you think it was like your soul's contract or whatever? It's like we're going to show her a glimpse when she's 2, but she won't remember it. And then we're going to pop her over to the other side again to give her a little taste, and that might be a little much, so we're gonna wait again, and then she's going to share the message with the world? Or do you think it's more of a I don't know if I believe in coincidence.
I think it was
Yeah.
the perfect storm with me.
Yeah.
It was the perfect storm. And, I hate to think that I planned having a horse, clobber me and then, have a few accidents. I sound like such a klutz. I'm actually a pretty athletic person.
Well, yeah,
Rode
horses
horses for
though.
years and didn't get a scratch. I
Yeah.
rode without a saddle. Um, yeah, it was really the perfect storm for me and was the best gift. And it helped me navigate things that I never could have gotten through had it not happened. I have autoimmune disease and I was diagnosed in my 20s. I got it young. And I've had multiple life and death close calls with it. My spleen hemorrhaged and I nearly died. And sometimes I wish I was ready to pass because it was so bad. And I endured some, pretty brutal things, which people with long-term chronic illnesses do. I'm no martyr. I'm no saint. I'm no example. I mean, sometimes I really didn't take it well, but having that foundation of knowing that physical reality is just the dermis of the universe, and that there's so much more, and that there is a continuization of existence after physical death. Now, that has gotten me through a lot. It is like my sister was my best friend in the whole world, and she really had it. Tremendous psychic ability. I was in a plane once that nearly crashed, and it was an overseas plane. And I was coming back from France, and I guess I was like 25. So I was in this, we dropped and it was really scary. The mask came down, the whole enchilada. And when I got back to my apartment in New York City, I hit the answering machine, and it was my sister in Washington. She goes, "I think you were in danger sometime today." And you know what? I got an image of a baseball of all things. Did a baseball hit you in the head? And I was like, I realized I was during the near plane crash. We were watching the Robert Redford movie about baseball called The Natural.
Wow, yeah, remember that movie.
Yes, and my sister picked up on that, and she was my best friend, and she passed away over 20 years ago.
Yeah.
One night we were talking on the phone, and her heart stopped, and it's been a terrible loss.
Oh my gosh, I'm
Terrible
so
loss.
sorry.
Thank you. Thank you.
Do you, um, y- I know we've kind of talked about this. You obviously have these sensitivities and abilities and
Mhm.
intuition. Have you noticed your own, or do you actively have spirit communication that you notice? Have you been able to predict things as your sister did? Are you able to communicate with your parents, your sister? Is that something that you
What
notice?
I have is, what has happened is, I didn't talk about this for 30 years. I would talk about it with my sister and my mom. My dad didn't want to hear it. He goes, I know you're not crazy, but I just don't want to hear it, Laura.
Yeah.
He used to say, when you're dead, you're dead. There's no problems and no taxes. Um,
Right.
so I really kind of kept it, very, very quiet, though I would have some remarkable experiences, paranormal experiences. And, it's like in your mind, when I was 40, I mean, it was bubbling up so much. I literally dreamt the blueprint of my first book, Near-Death Connection. And I can't write. I didn't think I could write. I got on the computer and typed like a demon. I thank God for my typing teacher, Susan Kugel, that I could even type because of my longhand's terrible. So
Yeah.
these things just poured out of me, and I put all of the paranormal things that I was able to like get it out,
Hmm.
finally get it out, and some of my theories about things, and it was wonderful, very cathartic. But um I had some pretty close calls with my illness that really drew me closer to the other side. Would you
Yeah.
like to? Mm,
Yeah. If
okay.
you'd like to share, I'd love that.
And when I was 34, I was in a really rough shape, and I was feeling bad, and I went to the hospital, and I said, something's really wrong. They did these very expensive scans, and, I had an inflamed liver capsule from autoimmune disease, terribly painful, but not fatal. Okay. Didn't get better. So I started to chug aspirin. I don't like Tylenol. So I did aspirin because for pain relief. Wasn't thinking anything about it. And one morning I woke up and my grandfather walked in the room, and he was lifelike. He had on um, uh, uh, um, a plaid flannel shirt, and his khaki pants. I mean, everything, every detail I could see. His thin leather belt and the fake little pocket with a button that he had. I saw his outfit completely, and it was like unbelievable. And I wasn't even surprised to see him. I was just glad. And he came over and he sat on the bed, put his hand over my stomach, and I'm sitting there like, no, it's like, I don't know, 6, 7 a.m. Your spleen, your spleen. And then he dissolved.
Mm.
So I was back home at my mother's house because I was pretty sick back then. I was very seriously ill. And I told her what happened. And then my next question was, well, where in your body is your spleen? Because I didn't know. And I'd gone to my doctor, and I told him, I said, is my spleen in jeopardy? Oh, don't worry about it. You did thousands of dollars worth of tests. They're not going to run it again. So, okay, I go home, I check the box. I did what I could. A few days later, I hear someone in my left ear, spleen, spleen. And then I just got up like a bolt of lightning, and a knowing hit me. Just a knowing, if my spleen isn't removed, I'm going to die. So I went to a doctor and just told him the truth.
Oh, good.
Yeah. And he looked at me and he said, well, I don't want to be the one taking it out, but I've had patients talk to me enough. And he said, I really believe you. He wrote me a physician's order. So get to the hospital after the surgery, and it was like, I wanted to know, did I go through all that suffering for any, my spleen had hemorrhaged, it had imploded, and there was a clot the size of a man's hand attached to part of my spleen. I didn't realize that taking aspirin was an anticoagulant. It would make the bleeding worse, but my spleen was hemorrhaging, and I was a few hours away from death.
Bless that doctor.
He listened.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think if you're in the business enough and you're open-minded enough, you hear so like you do hear so many stories like
yeah,
that, and it's it's funny because there's this disconnect often between science and spirituality when in
yeah,
fact it's all the same thing. Because science comes from the source and spirit, so it's a
yeah,
shame that so many people dismissed you, have dismissed other people, have dismissed me,
sure.
when you know what the issue is, and but I understand there's liability. I'm just so glad that happened for you. But
Yeah.
isn't that incredible? It's interesting the way that you describe your grandfather. When my grandfather came to me, he passed at 80,
Mhm.
and he looked great at 80, but he passed suddenly of
Yeah.
heart issues.
I'm
And
sorry.
thank you. And he was 80, and but he came to me, he came to me as about 50. He wasn't he looked you know
Yeah,
how you said you saw his clothing? He was
yeah,
wearing a baby blue, like, cashmere sweater. He was glowing, he hugged
yeah.
me, and this wasn't actually in a dream, but it was a visitation dream. It was not it
Contact dream.
it was the only one I've ever had, and therefore and I know the difference. I'm a very vivid, lucid dreamer, but this was
Mhm.
not that. He was right in front of me to the point where I hugged him and looked at him and I said, "Grandpa, you look so beautiful and I can see every pore in your skin.
Mhm.
I could see every pore, every whisker. It was so clear."
Right.
Interesting how that just struck me too, just it's a little bit of a tangent, but the
Yeah.
way that they come through, they don't come through all decrepit. Like they don't want you to remember them all haggard and sick.
When
They
you
want
when you leave your physical body, you leave all your ailments behind.
yeah,
Your second body is a complete copy of the first body, but healthy and glowing and, whole. When you get to source, I believe you are a point of consciousness. You
mhm,
change, you go into that point of consciousness. Because when I was at source, I didn't feel my arms and I wasn't conscious of my arms and legs.
right.
So that was kind of like creepy feeling, but kind of cool too.
Yeah.
Um, I had a plethora of paranormal experiences, and I have come to the conclusion that paranormal activity comes back with you. So when I was 50, I think I did my first radio show because I was trying to talk about the books, and they're based on near-death experience. I'm a near-death experiencer, so I'm drawing from my factual knowledge to write fiction. So I'm on a radio show. Well, um, paranormal team heard that and wanted to come debunk me. I said, "You're welcome to the house. Come on
Yeah.
down." Came to my farm, set up equipment, went under my house, making sure I didn't have any cameras or anything. And they were just the greatest people. Well, I had, and like, I guess a 2-year period, I had 5 separate paranormal teams come and do investigations. 5 teams had positive findings, ranging from class A EVPs to orb photographs of orbs, and also video.
I have a question, but I didn't want to interrupt you.
Sure.
Um, I I see this is something people ask me a lot
Uh,
about. So, and I think it's interesting to discuss when we talk about paranormal and activity, say in a
uh,
house. Basically, my question is going to be, what do you think's going on there? Because, and the reason I ask is that I I don't know what I think about hauntings as opposed to, I mean, spirit. I don't know because I've never had experiences with it versus grandma just trying to get your attention with flickering lights and that sort of thing.
mhm.
What do you think is going on in terms of what some people refer to as hauntings and the
Well,
paranormal versus, I
yeah.
guess, spiritual or whatever?
I think some people, when they exit their bodies, they're really confused. There's a lot of angst. I think ghosts are rare. I
Yeah.
don't think it happens all that much, but I think it is possible. Um, my stuff hasn't been negative. I don't believe in demons. I mean, I'm going to be real hardcore here. I don't believe in demons and the boogeyman and this. We have a life's plan that's incomprehensible at our level of existence. We just get a few clues that you got to be a good person, you got to try, you got to do your best, pretty basic stuff that is in, Judeo-Christian religion, it's kind of echoes that. But as far as heaven and hell, no, I don't think so. And the paranormal activity, I think for near-death experiencers goes with you, because I just had an investigation done in my condo here with tremendous positive findings. Every time I have one, there's positive findings, and they bring their own equipment. I don't really tell them a whole lot beforehand. I'm kind of like to be surprised, with what they have said. Now, I just thought, well, I really want to publicize my books a little bit, so I'm gonna just send some of this footage off to My Ghost Story. Well, they tried to debunk it and couldn't. So 3 weeks later, I'm in Hollywood, shooting My Ghost Story. My evidence was so powerful, they had me back to do a second show, and they've never done that with any of their guests in the 6 years, had them on twice for My Ghost Story caught on camera.
It makes sense, because I also hear near-death experiencers. A lot of my friends who have said
Yeah.
things like, "Oh, me and electricity can't be around electricity," or sometimes I'll be talking to them.
Batteries.
Yeah, batteries draining, all sorts of things. I agree with you. I
Awful.
think and also even just talking with you, I've been seeing like so much light around you. Like visually, I see aura. And you can tell that a lot of times when I'm speaking with a near-death experiencer, I'll see a glow behind them, and it's because you're sort of more in touch with that part of yourself. And I do think that's so interesting, because I'm with you. I don't believe in heaven and hell. I personally don't believe in demons. I don't want to say I know. I'm just saying, in my experience and from what I've witnessed, it doesn't ring true for me.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people will disagree. That's fine. I'm not saying I have all the answers. But I do also believe, true, as you said, that we can, when we have that light on. One of my teachers is Monica the medium, Monica 10 Kate, and she talks about that spirit knows when we have our light on. So that's why now, a lot of time recently, I'm just walking around and I keep going, oh God, I'm going to read another person. Okay, I guess here we go. Because spirit knows they can talk to me and I'm going to understand them. And also, I was going somewhere with that, and I think sometimes I think that's why my head's really cloudy today, because it's been happening in the last few weeks. All of a sudden, I'm just getting sort of like bombarded in the same way.
You get too much information at once.
It is. I'm not usually this. I'm like,
Can I suggest something that's helpful to folks?
Yes, please.
Okay, so when I was 24, I'm trying to figure things out. I've had my near-death experience. I go to the library because I don't know what else to do, and there was no information out there. And oh my God, I was so afraid of being labeled as a wackadoo. So, I looked at some books and I just thought, this doesn't add up, some of these, spiritual, paranormal. So I went to a therapist, and and I told her all about, I've spilled my guts out about the near-death experience, about seeing my grandfather, and then seeing my Aunt Evelyn come to me after she died and, screaming like a mental patient. I just let it all out. And she said, Laura, I believe you. She said, the most credible researcher right now is Robert Monroe and the Monroe Institute. These are very, we'll talk about out-of-body experience, near-death experience, very factual, very scientific research is being done there. I read Monroe's book, and it was like a lifeline. I was like one of the Titanic survivors in the ocean, and I got a lifeline. I read Monroe's book. It made sense. It was a hard read. Then William Buhlman has written a book series about out-of-body experience, and he was at I take his course. Boy, he's a great explainer about the afterlife. He's a great explainer. So these are the two people I'd recommend to read. I really wouldn't recommend anybody else. This is what resonated with me as truth. I also do Hemisync CDs to felicitate, out-of-body experience, or to get in touch with my or improve my psychic stuff. And let's face it, like 99 out of 100 times, nothing happens. but
Yeah.
that 1 out of 100 is gold.
I
Yeah.
appreciate that so much. Thank you. In fact, my last client wrote me today and she said, she said, I was raised Catholic. And could you give me some, she said, first of all, books to read
Yeah.
because that resonates. So thank you for that. And also she asked me about our near death, or sorry, our past lives of thing. And I loved what you said earlier. I just wanted to thank you for that as well about explaining, because what I told her is this. I said, from what I understand, the movie Everywhere, Everything Everywhere All at Once, I said it won an Oscar. Um, that's the concept that there aren't past lives. It's all happening at the same time
Oh, yes.
because there's no
Yes.
linear time on the other
You're
side.
at,
Yeah.
yeah, you got that. You're hitting the nail on the head. I usually don't go
Yeah.
into that because people think that's too far out. But yeah,
Good. I went there. I went there and I said the way that my teacher, Monica the medium, um, describes it as she calls it a clementine, like, and it's exactly what you said. It's a clementine fruit or an orange. And she said, this is like the higher soul, and then each of the little wedges inside is a different personality, as you said, which I hadn't heard it other than from her, the way that you described it. So we're each living, like, maybe I'm in the year 1500 as a monk, and maybe I'm me now, and I'm also the future. So I said it doesn't feel like Shannon dies and then she becomes someone else and then
no,
that person dies. It's
no.
all
It
happening.
all happens at once.
Yeah.
When the soul fractures and comes into physical reality, it goes into many pieces, many personalities at different times and different bodies, but it all happens at once. That's
Yeah.
mind blowing.
Like right now, you're the cranky cafeteria lady and you're Laura at
Yeah,
the same
yeah.
time.
God, she wasn't pretty. Anyways, can I share with you a murder mystery?
Please.
Okay, during the Hemisync things, this was like 2000 and I guess 7 or 9, I don't know. You're doing the Hemisync and you ask a question, who was I before I was me? So nothing happened. I go to bed. And I'm just tired. Forgot about the question. Well, be careful what you ask for, my dear, because sometimes you'll get the answer. This woman, is this there's like a border between a contact dream and leaving your body. I don't know which, but she came to me, wasn't very attractive. She had like brown hair. And I could only see her from the neck up. She said, I was your mother. Your name was Eleanor. A jealous boyfriend murdered you in 1942. And then the event was over. So I get up, oh my God, this was as real as get. And these things, I have got better vision and better hearing when I get these messages than I do in daily life. Like, I don't need the glasses.
Right.
So, I did everything. I paid for like an investigator to go through, funeral stuff and obituaries and stuff. Eleanor, 1942. But like 2 days after I had that message from Eleanor's mother, I'm in a pool and I'm just water walking, doing my exercises because I'm a swimmer. I swim every day, weather permitting, still do. So I'm in the pool and I get a flash. And what I call a flash is like a telepathic or a connection or anything of Eleanor. Well, I'm in the pool. I really wasn't prepared for this. I could see where I get two things at the same time in tandem. I'm very conscious of standing in the pool, yet I'm seeing like a picture of Eleanor. Red hair, parted in the, on the side, very small blue eyes, kind of a distinct chin, maybe a little bit overweight, 20 pounds overweight, Caucasian. I got the whole enchilada, what she saw, and I thought to myself, that's Eleanor, and that was me. And I have like no connection, I don't know. I mean, I just couldn't, it was a little distressing. Okay. My impression is, and I could really be wrong, that she was killed with a butcher knife. That's my only thing that I get. And because this whole childhood of mine, I've had this very awkward fear of butcher knives.
Mm,
So even when I'm washing my butcher knife, I have to put it away. I can't lay it out.
interesting.
Can't lay it on the table because it bothers me. That's a weird quirk. It's something I wouldn't share with people because that's really not, that's stupid. So I've been trying to solve this murder mystery, and I've even did like a YouTube video and asked people to help me. But this was a night, so she was Caucasian, so she could be Canadian, American, British,
British,
South
yeah.
African. Eleanor's an American name. I wouldn't think it would be terribly European, but it actually, she could have lived in another
Yeah.
country. So I would really love to find out who did it.
Yeah.
And if you think about it, 1942, I was born in 59. That's a quick turnaround.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my past life murder mystery. And I think it, it's like, I feel like, I'm honest when I do these interviews and when I do these writings, because I figure I'm 63, I'll be dead in like 15 years. It really won't matter, but I'd like to tell my truth.
Right.
But then sometimes I'll get questioned by like a relative or somebody. And then I feel like, oh, why did you open your mouth? They're going to think you're nuts or you do that, or, just fly that freak flag.
You're
proud.
safe here. This is the safe
Yeah.
place. In fact, that's the advantage that my
Yeah.
podcast is smaller than some, because
Yeah.
everyone who's here, at least for the most, all I get nothing but love here, and anyone who's not interested moves it along. But it's because the people that are here are like us, curious about
Yeah.
this. I'm not going to say speak for everybody, obviously, and I'm not saying that I'm immune to criticism, but I feel like at first I was a little nervous, and then now it's like this has become a community, and that's what's so beautiful. It's not just a podcast, and I'm sure you have the
Well, I've done national TV shows 3 times, so I mean,
you're gonna get
yeah. So it's like
yeah.
I thought, well, it did end a couple of romantic relationships.
The contributed
I don't
to
care.
I mean I don't want to say it's the reason, but it was a factor. In fact, I was going to share this earlier because it's not he and I are still friends, but we were together 8 years and we just were not compatible, period.
Okay.
But we're still friends. And but one of the funny things that happened when you were talking about ghosts, and that's where I was going with it, is that and my best friend is a TV writer, and she actually wrote me into one of her scripts as this medium, but and she uses this joke in it that my partner just said, well, he said something like, I don't like it. It creeps me out. It's weird. And he said, and I don't want you bringing any ghosts in here. And I said, they're not ghosts, they're spirits, and they're here because they love you. So get used to it. And so she always jokes that it's not ghosts, it's spirits. And that's, it's just that joke that we can differentiate it. Like, I'm not weird. I talk to spirits. I don't talk to ghosts. But I'm so happy to have met you, and I'm surprised that we haven't sooner, but I thank you for giving so much of your time and your energy. I just want to sort of round this out by asking you what I ask a lot of people is, what is it that you want people to know? And that's, I ask it a very broad question on purpose. First thing that comes to your mind, what is it that you want people to know?
Knowing that continuation of existence is a reality, and that it's just beautiful to know that you're not going to be separated from the people you've lost, that you will be reunited with the people that you love that have passed, that the bond isn't broken, that the love is even stronger after death than it is, and that they are caring for you. You may not be able to feel it or perceive it, but they do surround you and love you still. So to know that I'm still loved after all my family is deceased and I'm alone is of great significance to me. It really is. I came out of the closet, so to speak, because after my near-death experience, I had such isolation. And when I was in my late 20s, and I, saw some people on TV They were talking about spirits and stuff. I mean, they just sounded nuts, cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. And you know what? Seeing ghosts and demons were the least of their problems. Let me tell you, some of
Yeah.
the people that, oh my God, get the net. But then there was a whole list of people that have come back after a near-death experience like myself and just had very odd, random, weird, uncontrollable paranormal activity that it takes years to be able to digest and process. So if some of the stuff I've done helped somebody a little bit, good, because there was nobody there for me. And if somebody can, this has not made me a better person, it's made me aware. I can't do readings, I can't do tell you where your dead Aunt Sally hid the jewelry or anything like that. But I've had after death communication with loved ones. My grandfather came back to save my life. My sister came to collect me. And I guess it was 2010 when I had a surgery that went wrong and I had complications, and she came to collect me, and I'm not ready.
Mhm.
I wasn't ready, but I knew she was there, and that what great comfort that is to know when I am ready. I think I'm going to have a pretty easy transition, because we work so hard to know what, to make the right investments, to eat healthy, to know and learn everything about our surroundings here, to get an education. We're here for a short time. We're going to be there for eternity. So I want to know the rules of the road before I take the trip.
That's so well said. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom. I also encourage everyone to subscribe to your YouTube channel, buy your books, read your books. And now I want to see the show. So you're going to
Book
have to,
sales are good.
yeah, yeah. I want to,
I put real paranormal things that I learned and real experiences that I've had in each of my novels. And near-death experience, one of the characters has has an accident, and I take it into fine detail, the step-by-step near-death experience. I try.
that's cool.
But
That's
thank you for
great.
having me on your
Oh
show.
my gosh. It's been such a pleasure. I'm so grateful. Thank you for helping to further the mission. I hate that word, but just for lack of better one, just what we're doing here. I think it's nice that we're in it
Yeah.
together. And I think we're all of us that are in this kind of work, we don't do it for, well, at least I don't do it for money. We don't do it for the money. We do it because we care, we're interested. It becomes a living because you're spending all your time doing it,
Mhm.
but it's really important. And your
Mhm.
message just sums that up too. We're all going to lose people. It hurts really badly,
Yeah.
but it does help to know that they are still alive.
And they're
Just
not in distress. I
they're
just
not.
want to say that when I saw my grandfather, there was no trace of cancer. There was no angst. There was peace. There was, you know, it was beautiful.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Laura, for being here today. Again, you're going to say your last name for me, Lura
Ketchledge.
Ketchledge. I don't, and I'm usually, it's funny, I'm a voice actor. I don't have trouble pronouncing things, but there's something tongue twistery about that.
Yeah.
Um, Laura Ketchledge, thank you
Yeah.
for being here again. Thank you so much for listening with an open heart and mind, for your likes, subscribes, leaving comments below, and sharing with like minded friends. Your support means the world, and I could not do this without you.